This meeting is being recorded.
So welcome to today's GOAT seminar, which is the last for this semester. And today's speaker is Hubička, who will introduce us into big Ramsey degrees.
Okay, so thank you. I'm happy to be allowed to speak here by Tomáš Vala, which is a great honor. I would like to speak about big Ramsey degrees, and this is supposed to be introduction talk. So I never gave talk like this before, so we will see how it goes. And I will start with the Ramsey theorem. The Ramsey theorem in the easy way says that we have 6 people on the university. Then there is a group of 3 people which either mutually know each other or they are mutual strangers. And this has a generalized form, which is written using this arrow notation. So what does it mean? So you read it in the way that for every P, N, and K, there exists a capital N such that the capital N arrows N, P, and K. And the arrow is so-called the Rado partition arrow. It says that if I partition P element subsets of X, then and the X is greater than N into K classes or colors, then there exists a Y, which is a subset of X of size little n, such that all the P element subset has the same color, so they are monochromatic. So this party problem is that the 6 arrows little 3 and P is 2 and K is 2. So that means that I'm coloring pairs, which are the edges, and in 2 colors, and I'm able to find a monochromatic triangle, which is a subset of size 3. So probably many of you know this theorem. If not, it's a fun theorem. And what's interesting about it is that it has a lot of applications to different areas of mathematics. That means that, I also made a picture that this is not true for 5. This is an example when you don't have a monochromatic triangle and you have the coloring of the graph on 5 vertices. Okay, so there are many Ramsey-type theorems, which are all about finding monochromatic configurations in colorings of some big objects. And the first one, which actually was also proved by Ramsey, is the infinite Ramsey theorem, which is saying that if you are coloring omega, and by omega I mean the set of all integers, and you are coloring the subsets of omega of 6k, k you can choose to be any finite number, of size p with k colors, then you are able to find the monochromatic subset. And here I have slightly changed the notation, which is no longer so standard. I have added this little 1, and the 1 means that I'm able to find a copy which is containing at most one color. And I can change this 1 to be a different number, and this is the Ramsey degree. So sometimes we are not able to find the things which would be fully monochromatic, but maybe you can reduce any number of colors to 2, so then the Ramsey degree is 2. So that's the basic definitions. So I wonder if there are any questions about it. Okay, so I hope that's easy enough. So there will be some twist. And the twist is that I will start to consider Ramsey theorems on structures, which is something which was invented in 80s and 70s. And one of the founders of this area is Nešetřil and Rado, from Prague. And so the structure formulation of the infinite Ramsey theorem is the following. So you take the class of all finite linear orders, which are the objects which you might be coloring and which you are searching. And then for every linear order in the class of all linear orders, and every k, which is still the number of colors, if I'm coloring the order of omega, which is the usual order of the integers, then I'm able to find the copy of the order of omega, which is having only one color. So it's exactly the same statement, except that I'm speaking about the structures. And if you have it formulated this way, then you can give the meaning to the partition arrows. So this B choose A is usually meaning either the binomial coefficient or the subsets of a given size from B. Here I'm denoting by this the set of all embeddings from A to B, which for linear orders is exactly the same thing. You can check. And then the arrow notation has exactly the same meaning. So I'm coloring C choose A, so all copies of A inside of C, and I'm able to find a specific embedding of B such that on the B, all the copies are having at most T different colors. And for T is 1, it's monochromatic. So if you have this formulation, then the natural question is, if the Ramsey theorem is also true for rationals. By rationals here, I mean only the rational numbers and the order on them. No operations. So it's just linear order. But it's different from the order of omega because, for example, it doesn't have endpoint. It doesn't have 0. So this is its question. If this is true. This question is still sort of natural. If you know the Ramsey theorem, then probably you can calculate this question.
I think it's rather a rational question.
Yeah, it's very rational question. Yeah. And Sierpinski, which is famous for the fractal shapes, has actually found that this is not true if you are coloring fast. So he was able to find a coloring of rationals, which has the property that every copy of rational inside of rationals is having 2 colors. And how such coloring can be made? So you start with rationals. That's my attempt to draw rationals, and you pick and you enumerate them. So you have a rational number 0, which is not necessarily 0, it's just 0 in my enumeration of rationals. And if you pick it, you split rationals into 2 intervals, which are having the same shape. And there are sort of copies of rationals again, except for the endpoints. The endpoints, well, no, they are not even endpoints. So there are copies of rationals again. And then you choose the element number 1, which is either on the left or on the right, depending on the enumeration. And what happens is that you split rational into 3 intervals. And if you continue with this, you build a tree which looks like this. And every rational number is a node of this tree. And what you can do, you can color the subtrees which are induced by 2 elements. So I have 2 nodes of the tree. I also have the unique leaf, which is the first bracket on the way to the root. And now, if my subtree has the shape like this, so the left vertex appears after the right vertex, maybe I say it's green. If my subtree has a shape like this, so the left vertex is before the right vertex, maybe I say it's blue. And also I have these arranged nodes, when it happens that one is successor of the other. And I can make the coloring of rationals, which looks pretty much like this. And we can check very easily, that's obvious from the picture, that every copy of rationals containing at least 2 colors of this. So how do you check that? Well, there's pretty easy argument for it. Now the order which goes from left to right is the order of rationals, and that's dense. So it means that between every 2 elements you have the next one. And the order which goes from bottom to up is well order. So it means that you have caps and you have the minimums. And if you was able to find a copy which is only 1 color, let's say blue, that means that the well order and the dense order would be the same. But that's not possible because they are different. So of course, eventually I will have to flip. I cannot enumerate the rationals in the way that the enumeration would be increasing, because eventually I have to go back to the numbers which I have skipped. So that's the Sierpinski's argument, which is not very hard. But what happened later is actually quite complicated development. So in 90s, Laver developed a method which can find the copies of Q in Q with the bounded number of colors. That was later generalized into this theorem, which is by Devlin. Devlin wrote this theorem in his thesis, and he disappeared from mathematics, so the theorem was forgotten for a while. But it's a cute one. So what it says, it says that for every linear order of given size, there exists some number which is t, such that if you are coloring Q with any number of colors, then you are definitely able to find the copy of Q which has only t colors. And I forgot to say that I'm coloring the copies of this linear order inside of T. So this is a generalization of this coloring of pairs, because I can choose, for example, order on 3 vertices, and I will be coloring triples inside of Q, and I will be able to find the copy which has only a small number of colors. So what's the small number of colors? The small number of colors is the 2n minus 1 derivative of tangents in 0. So this is how it works. So yeah, it's an interesting theorem. If I had this in my thesis, I would be happy, because that's really magic happening here. So yeah, so if you are coloring vertices, then you can always find a monochromatic copy. If you are coloring pairs, then we already know the Sierpinski coloring with 2 colors. I have 3 colors in my slide. I have also these vertices which are one successor of the other, but that's a color which can be avoided. The other 2 colors cannot. And if I'm coloring triples, and it's 16, and then the numbers goes up quite quickly. So if you put this sequence of numbers into this encyclopedia of sequences, it will tell you that those are the ring types. So this is the sequence which is also called the odd tangent numbers, because derivative of the tangents. So what I would like to do, I would like to explain how this theorem is proved to some degree, and then show some new developments about that. So if you want to prove such theorem, you need to understand what is a tree. And tree is something else than the tree in graph theory, so it's not a cyclic graph, but it is a partial order. And the partial order has a property that if you choose some element of this partial order, then if you look on the downside, the matrices which are below, then you have the finite linear orders, which is true on the trees which looks like this. So the tree has a root, and if you pick any vertex, this is the chain which is going down to the root. There's a standard definition of trees in the set theory, so they don't understand the graph theoretical definition. And you can say that it is rooted if it has a unique minimum element, so all the trees will be rooted. You can have call the vertices to be nodes, and you can say what the level is. The level is the length of the chain which is below the vertex. And you can define this meet operation, which I was using in the Sierpinski coloring. If I have 2 nodes, I'm looking for the earliest node which is in those down chains. And then also that's you to define the height of the tree, which is the distance between the bottom and leaves. So this is the usual binary trees, which in the set theory has this funny notation. It's 2 power less than omega. So now the difficult definition is what's a subtree, and the subtree is not what you would think mostly. It's a definition which was found by Hackman and Lockley. It doesn't look obvious, but it's a good one. So yeah, you have yeah, okay. So you have a tree, and you want to know what's a subtree. And subtree is a subset of this set which is forming the tree. But it has to satisfy a couple of properties. So if you look on the subset as a tree, it has to be rooted and balanced. The other definition is that every level of S is a subset of level of T. So it has to somehow sit inside level by level. And the last definition is that if you have a node of S which is not maximum, and you look on its immediate successors in T, then every immediate successor has a successor inside of S. So I will make a picture so you can process this definition. The first part of the definition tells that you have a root node, so you can choose the root node inside of your tree. And the second part of the definition says that if your root node doesn't happen to be leaf, then every immediate successor has a successor inside of S. So that means that I have two immediate successors. And the third definition says that every level of S is a level of T. So that means that I have to pick another level, and then I'm forced to pick one vertex from the successors of the immediate successors. So this is the example of a strong subtree. Is it clear? It is kind of a definition which looks arbitrary, but if you want to do Ramsey theory on trees, this is the right definition. Other definitions fails. So I have some examples. So here you have to continue the same way. So you start from the nodes. You decide that they are not leaves, and that means that you need to pick another level, and then you need to pick successors of those immediate successors for each of them one. So this is an example of a strong subtree. And so the strong subtree has two forms. Either it is infinite, so there's no leaves, or all the leaves are on the same level, which is the other way of saying that the tree is balanced. Okay, so this is the definition, which was actually sort of invented to solve this problem about Q. And this is a theorem which is called the Milliken tree theorem. And basically, it is a strengthening of the Ramsey theorem, which is not very popular in combinatorics because I think the combinatoricians doesn't like the definition of tree. But it is very important in the set theory, and it is the right strengthening of the Ramsey theorem. So basically, a little bit of notation. So if I have a T and I choose the height of the tree, then STRK is the set of all strong subtrees of the given height. And now, basically, this is copying the Ramsey theorem with some extra names. So if I have the rooted, balanced, and finally branching tree T of infinite height, and I choose the K, which is the height of the trees which I'm coloring. So I have a product coloring of this strong subtrees of height K. Then I'm able to find a strong subtree of infinite height such that it is monochromatic. So every strong subtree inside of that is hitting one specific color. So if you consider the tree which is not branching, it's just a chain, then this is precisely a Ramsey theorem. So it is really a generalization of Ramsey theorem. The interesting thing is that it is really hard to prove. The Ramsey theorem is something you can prove on the 42nd semester for discrete mathematics. This is not something you can prove in the discrete mathematics class. So it is a complicated theorem which was proved by Hubička and Laver in '66. Interesting is that the Devlin's paper was actually based on earlier hypothesis. And it's the pigeonhole version of this theorem. So it is for k equals to 1. So I'm coloring strong subtrees of height 1, which are simple vertices in two colors. And the theorem tells me that I'm able to find a strong subtree of infinite height, with just a couple levels. And even then, I have to be cheating because when I was preparing the picture, I have to place the nodes very carefully to find the strong subtree then. But that's what the theorem promises. Okay, are there any questions about how to learn the theorem? So yeah, this is kind of a big weapon from set theory, and it is interesting. There are a couple of proofs of the Untitled theorem. A lot of them are kind of properly infinite. They use the technology of forcing, or they use topology, but also combinatorial proofs by Todorcevic. So it's two of them. So people are still finding easy proof of this theorem. Now we are able to prove what Laver did, and he proved the easier version of the Devlin theorem I was speaking about at the beginning. So this is exactly the same statement as before. I'm coloring copies of some given linear order of the finite size, and there's a way to find the copy of the Q, which is hitting only a few colors, where Q is this very quickly growing function we had. This time we are not really interested in precisely determining the number t, but just giving an upper bound. So now the easy case if O is equal to 1. So I take this binary tree, and I can order it from left to right. So for every node, I can project it to the floor, and I have the left to right order of the tree, which is kind of lexicographic order of the tree. And you can easily see that this left to right order is the same as Q, because it has the same properties. Like if you have two nodes, you are always able to find a node in between, and there is no minimum, there is no maximum. So it is a copy of Q. And now I take the finite coloring of the vertices of this tree, and I'm looking for a monochromatic copy of Q, and I can use this huge weapon, the hyperlocally theorem, and I can find a strong subtree which is monochromatic. And now, if I project the strong subtree to the floor, I again get a copy of Q, and the copy of Q is monochromatic. So there are easier ways of achieving this, but this is a systematic way. So you can use this hyperlocally theorem to find monochromatic copies of Q. So now, what happens if I'm starting to color pairs? Well, obviously, something difficult has to happen because I have to arrive to these target numbers. So what's going on here? So basically, if I coloring something bigger than just singletons, I have a problem that if I pick, for example, 3 vertices in my tree, there is no strong subtree which would be obviously associated with them, but I can build one by making something which is called envelope. So what I do is that I insert all the meets because the strong subtree has to be meet closed, and then I follow what the definition forces me to do. So the definition tells me that now I have included these levels, and the definition basically says that on every level I have to follow those directions. So this is the envelope of these 3 vertices, and that's a strong subtree. It's quite big, and the property is that you can check that if you have a given set of vertices inside of the tree, then the envelope has height at most 2x minus 1. And why? Because the only moment when I was adding 2 levels was when I was doing meets. That was n minus 1 meets for n vertices. So the observation is that now I can make multiple choices of 3 vertices which are producing the same envelope. So if I make the envelope of the red vertices and I make the envelope of the blue vertices, I arrive to the same strong subtree. So what I get, I get the connection between the strong subtrees and the subsets of Q, but it's not one-to-one. Multiple subset of Q will get the same envelope. But because the envelope is bounded, I know that only finitely many different sets hits the same envelope. So that means that if I have the finite coloring of subsets, I have also finite coloring of envelopes, where I simply combine all the colors of every subset having the given envelope. So that's what I do. So I fix the finite coloring of n tuples, and for every what is called embedding type, I can apply the Milliken theorem. So embedding type is how this triple is configured inside of my envelope. So for every configuration, I apply the Milliken theorem, and at the end, I get a copy which has at most Tn many different colors, and the Tn is the number of these embedding types. So that's giving an upper bound, and that's a proof that the big Ramsey degrees of the Q are finite, which I mean that if I choose any finite substructure of Q, which is linear order, I can by this theorem find the upper bound, the number of kernels inside of the copy of rationals. So that's the time to celebrate because the first theorem is proved. Now, because I was told I have at most 1 hour, I will not show you the full proof of the Devlin's theorem, but I will explain you what happens. So if you use this proof by Laver, you arrive to the numbers which are bigger than these Lagrange numbers, because the number of envelopes is relatively high. But what you can do, you can carefully study which envelopes you can avoid and which envelopes you cannot avoid. So you need to somehow characterize the unavoidable envelopes and unavoidable embedding types, and those are called Devlin types, and they are defined by this slightly technically looking definition. But the moral of the definition is that it is a tree. You have some leaves, and on every level, only one thing is happening. So on this level, there's a one branching. On this level, there's a one branching, and this has to go to left. On this level, there's a leaf, which is again something interesting happening. On this level, there's a leaf, and here is also a leaf. And then, if you, for example, take triples, you can look, this is Devlin types of pairs, and these are Devlin types of triples. So you can look for all the trees which are satisfying these conditions, and you arrive to these 16 subtrees. And these tangent numbers happens to be kind of combinatorial sequence, which is calculating these trees. So the idea is very easy. You take the root of the tree and you split it into 2 subtrees of the same kind, which are interleaving on the levels. So this is choosing on which level which tree grows, and this is the number of the types of the smaller trees. So that's the idea behind the Devlin's formula. So that's the reason for a bigger celebration. You must take a look.
No, I'm trying to digest the definition.
Yeah.
I just don't see why there are only 2 Devlin and Devlin types.
Because on every level you need to have either leaf or branching. And here, on the first level, if you have the leaf, then you will be done. So that will be only one method. So you have to definitely have a branching. And on the next level, if you have branching, you will have 3 leaves. So you definitely have a leaf.
Yeah, but
you can choose if the leaf is on the left or if it's on the right.
So what does it follow that one of the branch must be left? Here, both of these 2 branches that are connected to the leaves are in the same direction, to the left, and both to the right.
That's here. I didn't want to explain it in the details, so but I'm happy that you asked. So basically, the condition says that if you have the leaf, everyone has to go to the left. But it's true, I have taken this from the paper which was using a different definition. This picture is flipped, so this should go to the left, according to this definition. I should not have been lazy.
But then for 3, some of them go left and some of them go right.
They always go left, except that on the picture they go right. I had this picture from, I forgot that I was using different definition. There are multiple ways how you can define this. I think this is the easiest definition, but then the pictures should have been changed. Thank you. But there are 16 of them. Now there is how to define it in the way that you don't really care, which way these things go. And that's what I use when I was drawing these pictures. Okay, sorry, I will fix that in case I will give the talk again. But anyway, we can celebrate because we have the formula for the Devlin types. And now what happens next? This somehow stayed as a kind of obscurity of Ramsey theory. It was published in '79 and it was forgotten. But in 2003, there was an important paper by Professor Todorcevic, and they connected Ramsey theory to topological dynamics. And Todorcevic found this result, and he somehow posted it as the open problem at the end of the paper, explaining there is a little known paper by Devlin, and it is not clear how this relates to the theory that I was presenting. and also it is not clear how to generalize this to other cases. That's someone who started research, which was relatively slow at the beginning, but now it's moving quickly, so that's the reason why I want to speak about it. Maybe you all will be doing the Ramsey degrees from tomorrow. Let's see how much time I have half of the time, so that's not bad. The next structure where the big Ramsey degrees was understood is something which is called the Rado graph. So I'm using R for it. And for that, I need a little bit of extra definitions. So the first definition is that I can say that the structure is homogeneous if every partial isomorphism extends to an automorphism. So since I have a blackboard, maybe I can draw a picture. So basically you have the complete structure like R, and you take two finite substructures, and you make the isomorphism from one to the other. And what you want, you want to find the automorphism of R, which has the property that here it is behaving the same way as F. So that it means that it extends. It is interesting exercise to figure out what graphs are having this property. For example, if you take a complete graph, then it has this property because this is a partial permutation and it extends to the full permutation. But for example, if you take a 5 cycle, it still has this property, but if you take 6 cycle, it doesn't. And the reason is that you have multiple types of diagonals. So this diagonal cannot be mapped to this diagonal by automorphism because you have long and short ones. So there are only few finite homogeneous graphs, but there are more infinite homogeneous graphs, and one of them is called the Rado graph. And the Rado graph has a property that is both homogeneous, so it means it's very symmetric, and it's universal. That means that every countable graph is a subgraph of this graph. And one way how to construct it is that you take integers and you flip the coin on every pair and decide if there is an edge or not randomly. And with probability 1, you get precisely this graph R, which is another statement. You can do the following. You can generalize this theorem about others to the theorem about graphs. So now G is the class of all finite graphs. And again, if I take any finite graph, there exists some number which depends only on the graph itself, such that for any number of colors, if I'm coloring the copies of A inside of this graph R, which is very complicated because it contains any other graph, I'm able to find a copy of R which is hitting only T many colors. So this is a theorem of little bit unknown origins. It was first published by Sauer, but each time I'm speaking about it, Todorcevic stands up when he's in the room and he's saying it was already known before. But that's the first publication of the result I know of. And this is actually a generalization of the finite result, which I know when it was first published. It was first published in 1977 by Nešetřil and Rado, and it's well-known Nešetřil-Rado theorem, which is saying that precisely the same thing, but in the finite way. So if you choose a graph and you choose another finite graph, there exists even bigger finite graph, such that if you are coloring copies of A inside of the C, you are able to find a copy of B, which is having only a few colors. And few again depends only on choice of A, but not on the choice of B, which is important. So this is a kind of kindergarten version of the Nešetřil-Rado's theorem, which is an important result. They got government prize for it. Again, if you want to prove a theorem like this, first maybe you want to understand what are the colorings which you can produce. And he was able to do this trick with Sierpinski coloring, and we can repeat the trick with Rado graph. So this is my best picture of the infinite random graph. And if I choose a vertex, again I have an enumeration. My infinite random graph splits into two parts, right? One part are the vertices which are connected by edge, and the other part are vertices which are not. And they're about the same size because it's a random graph. And that means that again, again, I have this type of type. So this is the type of vertex which is not connected and types which are connected. So I draw this edge there. And if I pick the next vertex, again, the types are splitting. So here are vertices which are not connected to vertex 0 or 1. Here are vertices which are connected to 1 but not to 0 and so on. So I have more vertices. And if I continue, then I have 8 types. And you can guess how the picture continues. You get the full algorithm, which is good news because we already have a theorem on infinite binary trees. And we can again produce the colourings depending on the envelopes inside of the tree. So again, on the green and blue, I have the same meaning as before. What you can do, you can take this infinite binary tree and you can produce a graph on it. Like before, I was turning it into linear address. So now I will tell this is the graph of my tree, and the graph is defined in easy way. So vertices are 0, 1 sequences, and if I have two vertices of different lengths, and I can assume that A is shorter than B. I think I have a picture which is not visible, but this is A and this is B, and I can say that I'm forming edge in fact only if the digit where B is passing the length of A is 1. So that means that I have A, I have B, and I look here, and if the B goes to 1, there is an edge, and if it goes to the left, there is no edge. So that's the definition of a graph. So here is the edge, and so on. I didn't make the picture of all the edges because it would take a lot of time on computing. Now you can somehow see if this graph works the similar way as the other in the previous proof. And the answer is yes. So first thing you can show is that this graph happens to be universal. That means that every other graph, including this magical Rado graph, can be embedded into the graph. That's pretty easy. What you do is that you take the graph and you enumerate its vertices, and then you place every vertex on one level, and every vertex then corresponds to the 0, 1 sequence, and you put there 0 if there is no edge, and you put there 1 if there is an edge. So you can represent every graph by this. It's actually what you get is adjacency matrix. That's funny definition of it. And the other thing is that this definition of the edge is stable for passing into the strong subtree. So that means that if you have a tree and you have a strong subtree, you can think of it as a embedding of the tree inside of the tree. And this embedding also happens to be a graph embedding on this definition of edges, because the strong subtree is preserving the levels and is preserving what happens on the levels. So it preserves the definition of edge and non-edge. And then you can repeat the same proof as invented by Laver in the 60s, and you are able to prove the upper bound theorem for graphs. So there is a good news that the proof is kind of complicated, but it gives you more than just one result. It also gives you a result for a Rado graph, and you can also make the Laver bounds, but the Laver bounds no longer has a nice formula. They are not cosinus numbers or something like that. But they still exist and they are known. So another celebration of even bigger theorem, and this is what happened since then. So people realize that they can prove big Ramsey degree theorems. And you can prove the big Ramsey degree theorem by Ramsey theorem, but you don't get very far. The Ramsey theorem basically says that omega, if you see it as linear order, has a big Ramsey degree 1. And you can do something more. You can add some Euler remarks, and you can play little tricks. Then you can do this Milliken trees theorems, and you get the order of rationals. You can get a random graph, and if you work a little bit harder, you can figure out that you can do, for example, graphs with 2 types of edges or directed graphs. So those are called simple structures by people doing it. This is pretty much what was known until 2019. And since then, a new results was created. So the first was the results by Dobrinen, which is set theorist from Denver. Now she moved to Rotterdam. And she was able to show that you can do something like the Rado graph, but without triangles. And so we have triangle-free triangle graph, and I will get to it. And she invented a very complicated proof, which is called the coding trees, and is done by forcing, which is a very set theoretic machinery. So the set theorist was rejoicing that they can use this machinery to prove new results. They was able to generalize it a little bit, but the problem is that the technology is rather complicated. So the other thing is that with my group in Prague, we was able to figure out that you don't need to have a binary structures. You can also do the Ramsey degrees for hypergraphs with edges with 3 vertices. And curiously enough, you cannot do it by the Milliken theorem, because the Milliken theorem somehow lets you to encode the binary information, but not much more. But you can do something which is called the product Milliken theorem, which is even more difficult theorem to formulate, but it's actually used to prove the Milliken theorem. And what I would like to speak about on the end, which I think should be relatively soon, so I will speak relatively quickly, is that you can use something which is called the Carlson-Simpson theorem, and you can have an easy proof of the Natasha's result on the triangle-free graphs. And you can prove more. You can do partial orders, metric spaces, and other things. So by today, we have quite many big Ramsey results, which are sort of slowly starting to make the theory. And so this is what Dobrinen has proved. So here you can take the class of all triangle-free graphs, and there exists something which is called the universal triangle-free graph, which is again the graph which contains every other countable triangle-free graph. You cannot construct it by a random process, but otherwise it's very similar to the Rado graph. And then precisely the same theorem exists. So for every finite triangle-free graph, there is a number which depends only on the graph itself. By now we know what the number is. And for any number of colors, if you are coloring the copies of A inside of this T, then you are able to find a copy of the T which is containing at most T colors. So yeah. So this is what she proved, and you can see the 75 pages proof, which is relatively substantial proof. It's based on this new technology of coding trees, and there is a new Milliken-type theorem which takes 70 pages to be proven. And fortunately, this was simplified by Zucker, and he made a more general proof which is only 25 pages. But his goal was to write as short paper on the topic as possible. So there is no way to get it short than 25 pages, which is still a substantial proof using relatively complicated machinery of forcing. This is a theorem which I proved at the beginning of COVID, and it is saying the same thing. It is saying that if you take the class of all partial orders, so like Ramsey theorem is about linear orders, so the partial orders is the next baby step. Maybe partial orders are easier than graphs. So if you take the universal partial order, then again, for every finite partial order, there is a number which depends only on the partial order itself, such that the usual thing happens. If you are calling two copies of this order inside of P, you are able to find a copy which is hitting only T many colors. And this is based on this Carlson-Simpson theorem, and later we realized that this actually is able to give you all the other existing proofs, and now we have a theorem which does even more. So again, you start by the colourings, and this part I can still probably explain until you start reading. So if you enumerate a triangle-free graph, you get the vertex 0, and the graph splits again into two parts. Either you are connected by F or you are not connected by F, and most likely both of the parts will be infinite, because if you build a graph in the symmetric way, which is for the homogeneity entries, then they will be infinite types here. So again, I have the pictures. I have two types, either F, no F or F. And then, if I take the next vertex, I get the splitting, but unlike in the Rado graph, one type is missing, because that type is type of triangle. You can see those are the vertices which are connected both to V1 and V0, and V0 and V1 have the F, so it's a triangle. So this guy is missing. And then if I continue, it depends where I place the vertex, the tree is going different ways. So it's no longer something as symmetric binary tree. It's kind of, it's under heavy weight or something like that. It's left-leaning tree. Because here, you have no edges, so this is called a zero branch. And on the leaf branch, you always get this binary branch. So if you do the offsets, you get a similar machinery. So if you put vertex 0 in your infinite compatible universe with offset, you get three paths. Either things are smaller, or incomparable, or bigger. And the point is when you fix your next vertex, things are splitting not symmetrically, because here you can have all the possibilities, but here you have to go to the right, because if you were going to the left, you would be totally possibility. You would have, this vertex is smaller than 0, this vertex is greater than 0. So, if you are greater than 0, then you cannot be smaller than something smaller than 0 or so. So the tree is growing in this kind of shape. And that was the problem with the proof of the Milliken theorem first, because they don't like the kind shape of the tree, because the theorem is not friendly to you, and it will always fit a subtree which is suddenly generated. So as soon as the tree is not fully branching, you have a problem. So what was the solution to this was to use a different Ramsey theorem. And I don't know how many of you have heard of the Graham-Rochet theorem. This one. So the Graham-Rochet theorem is sort of the answer. The Graham-Rochet theorem, which is an important theorem, so maybe I will stay bore you for a couple of minutes to explain how it works, is a theorem about calling something which is called the parameter word. And parameter word is something which is in the fixed alphabet. For me, the alphabet will be always something like this, LXR01. And it has k parameters, so it means that it contains this lambda symbol, lambda 0, lambda 1. And what you can do with these parameters, so they have an additional condition that the lambda 0 has to appear before lambda 1, and they have to appear before lambda 2. So different occurrences are in the order. If they are not, the theorem would not be right. And there is a substitution, so which is pretty much what you do in computer science, right? You have the word, and you have some kind of wildcards, replacement marks, and you substitute two different letters, so L becomes lambda 0 and R becomes lambda 1. So there's a substitution, and it has this funny little concept that you don't need to substitute all the variables. And in that case, you start doing the substitutions, and as soon as you hit the lambda 1, the program crashes and you get short word. So that's what the substitution does. And then you can define what the substitution on the subset. You simply substitute into every element of the set. And this is the infinite version of Graham-Rochet theorem, which was proved by Carlson and Simpson, independently by Voigt. And it is saying the following: so you fix the alphabet and you fix the number of parameters, and you are coloring the k-parameter words by finitely many colors. Then there is an infinite parameter word which is monochromatic, and that means that whatever I substitute into this infinite parameter word, I again hit the same color. So that's the Carlson-Simpson theorem, which is definition-wise, I think it's easier to understand than the Milliken theorem, but set theorist doesn't like it, and combinatorist doesn't do different things. So no one has noticed the connection before. And it is a theorem which is very similar to the previous one. So if I'm trying to describe subtrees by parameter words, and I find a word with no parameters, like word 0, I'm describing precisely one node in the tree, which is a root. If I put there some parameter, then I'm describing three nodes in the tree. Either I substitute empty word, and I get here, or I substitute 0, I get here, or I substitute 1, I get there. And if I make the sequence to be bigger, I'm describing subtree like this. And the observation is that I'm describing the strong subtrees, but there's a twist. Not every strong subtree is a parameter word. So what I cannot do, I cannot continue this, this size, because I don't have the lambda which would describe that. So the only way how to do it is to use another level and make an envelope. So basically, you can think of the parameter words as the subtrees, which are kind of more restricted than the strong subtrees. And what happens is that these subtrees has the similar properties as the Milliken tree theorem. So that means that if you choose finitely many nodes in your tree, you are again able to find the envelope. So here, for example, if I'm making the envelope of 0 and 0, 0, 1, all these parameter versions the property that if I substitute the right thing, I get both of them. So this is again an envelope. And I see people are leaving, so I will make it quick. And the envelopes are bounded in the size, and that's easy to do because in the parameters, because basically if you have a set of the words, you do what you have. So you are starting building an envelope. If you have same letters on both of them, you just make it the same. If you have different letters, you are forced to introduce a parameter. And the observation is that you need to introduce only so many parameters as many different columns you have in this drawing, which is exponentially many, but it's a finite number. So the envelopes are bounded. And the last thing is to find the definition of the edges in the triangle-free graphs, like I did for the rainbow graph, and we are finished. And this definition is sort of easy because instead of considering the tree of 0-1 sequences, I'm considering the tree of the one-parameter words. So, one parameter words are having zeros and lambdas. They don't have this branch because there are no lambdas, so it's not a parameter word. And I say that I put an edge between two vertices if they satisfy the same condition as before. So here I go to the right. But this definition makes triangles. So for example, this is a triangle, which this definition is closing because you can see that here both of these are going to the right, and here this one goes to right. So I added the additional condition that if this is the last edge of the triangle, I'm going to cancel it. This condition erases all the last edges of triangles. And again, you need to verify two things. You need to verify that this graph is again universal triangle-free graph, and you repeat the same proof as before. And you make the observation that the rule number 2 never hits in your representation because you have no triangles. And you have to make the observation that the definition of edge is stable for substitution. So if you pass the subtree, nothing happens. And that happens to be true because substitution works this way. They are not allowed to introduce you another pair of lambdas. And this is the full proof, which is again using the standard elements. First you verify the universality, then you verify that the edges are stable for substitution. They are not stable for strong subtrees because they can make these troubles, but substitution not. And then you use the Carlson-Simpson theorem, you verify that envelopes are bounded, and you have the proof of this theorem, which fits into one paragraph if you write it compactly, which is an improvement over the previous attempts. If you do the partial orders, which I will skip, you get precisely the same thing, and you can celebrate even more. So these are the three theorems which I wanted to show today. So maybe I will just quickly finish with what's going on right now. So people are trying to understand big Ramsey degrees of value structures, so high rarity, small rarity, forbidden substructures, and everything. At the moment, we are able to, this is the Natasha's paper on triangle-free graphs. This is this easy version, which is even showing more. You can have forbidden big pleaks like KK or colorful pleaks. And then we was able to find the precise Ramsey degrees of these structures. It's interesting because it's 95 pages long paper, and the number of co-authors is pretty much the same size as the number of people interested in the area. So I don't really know, how this paper will be referred, but we are waiting for it. And then we was able to get the big Ramsey degrees for metric spaces and other things described by forbidden cycles. And we now understand precisely the big Ramsey degrees of the partial order. And we also understand on hypergraphs. But there are a lot of other open problems. So if you want to play with some trees, I will be happy to discuss it more. And that's what I wanted to say today.
Thank you. Any questions? Maybe questions regarding some definitions?
If you want to see the struct subtrees again, you know. Okay.
I know I should have a question, but it was quite clear to me. So.
At least you have a joke.
All right, so let's thank the speaker again. And I guess see you in the next semester.